one of the things that I find most enjoyable is learning from super, super, super smart people. And from the moment that I had my first conversation with our CEO, Leo Pareja, I was blown away. Blown away because so much insight. You've had an incredible trajectory. Would love for you to tell us a little bit about your background and your journey, because it's very relevant to every one of us in this room.
Well, thank you, Rosie. So one of the things I'm really proud of is that I think I'm the only CEO of a publicly traded company that actually sold homes. I think that's important. So I'll give you the short version of my background. I got licensed at 19 years old while I was a sophomore in college. By my senior year of college, I had sold $20 million in business. I was the youngest KW broker in the entire system ever. By the time I was 28, I was the number one Kellums agent in the world. I then went and started...
How many homes?
I sold close to 4,000 homes.
Right.
And then I started a debt fund that I scaled to become a top 20 hard money lending business in the United States. And then while I was building that business, I wanted data, and I accidentally started a company called Remine, which got to 85% market share of every MLS in North America.
Accidentally, right?
And I had sold both those companies and was going to move to South Florida and mostly spearfish when I got a cold call from someone who's really good at sales named Glenn Sanford. So, and here I am.
So cold calling works.
It was a warm introduction, but I did not know him. I got a call saying someone is going to call you from this area code. Please pick up your phone.
That's amazing.
And funny enough, I actually said no to him the first time. So he asked me to be the chief technology officer, and I said I can play one on TV, but I actually like sales way better, and so I'm not interested in that. And he called me back a week later and said, I didn't expect you to say no. Come hang out with me for a day, and that was the first time we actually got to know each other. I'll give you the script because it's a really good example of like just not taking no. I said, well, what are you going to do next? And I said, I'll probably start another company. This is my third one. And he said, do you have the idea now? And I actually said, actually, no, I'm kind of burnt out. He said, well, why don't you come hang out with me for a while and help me fix stuff? And I think Brent thought I was hired to be the booth guy for EXPCon. But I went and spent some time with him, and he's like, listen, when you get the idea, I can, partner with you. We can go buy the company, or we can just invest in it, and then you go do your thing. And so I joined as the president of our affiliated companies, and 6 months later, he told me I was the chief strategy officer. And 18 months later, he told me I was the CEO. And so I'm not going anywhere, by the way.
Yes, that's awesome. I'm really curious, like, how does someone who sells 4,000 homes, someone who has seen things from way up here and now sitting as a CEO role, who speaks to top teams across the country, top agents across the country, what are those conversations like?
So I think this is really important, and I tell agents daily, doesn't matter if you sell 8 homes a year, you sell 1,100 homes a year. I feel like data sets you free, and I am a self-aware nerd, and data makes me happy because it gives you context. And what I tell everybody right now is, by a show of hands, do you realize that 2024 will be the worst year in real estate sales history in the last 30 years? Right? 2021 was the best year we've had in the last same amount of period of time. So from 2021 to 2024, we had a 40% drop. Like, that's meaningful. So the interesting thing is I get to have these very candid conversations, and it's normally one-on-one, and people kind of acknowledge stuff, and they go, I'm just burnt out. I am drained. I don't know if I want to do this anymore. And I'm talking about the names that you'd recognize in our company and not with our company, who are just like, this is brutal. And so I think everyone needs to give themselves some grace and just acknowledge that we're in a horrible time in the industry. We are in a recession of units, right? Recessions are defined a bunch of different ways depending on the economist you talk to. But in the world you and I live in, we are in a recession of units. We play a finite game in real estate in the sense that there are, on the low end, about 4 million transactions, 2023, 2024, 2008, 9. Previous to that was 1992, with a high of about 7 million transactions, and I'm talking about resale and new construction, and that was 2021, to 2006, right? So there's a floor, which is the good news. What we do is an essential service, and we learned that during COVID, right? X amount of people buy and sell real estate every year because of human condition. I talk about this a lot. Raise your hand if you ever woke up and said, rates are perfect today, I want to go home shopping. That's not what happens. What happens is you wake up, and at some point in your journey, you move out of your parents' home, and you form a household, whether it's roommates or a partner. Eventually, you make some more humans, and this one bedroom no longer works, and you need a second bedroom, and then you need a townhouse, and you need a single family, and then those humans get big and leave, and you need less space. Death, divorce, and a couple of promotions along the way statistically define all moves. And that's the super important part you need to think about. So what happens is this life event happens, and you decide you have to move. And that's the most important thing that I would focus on right now is the have to moves. And you can either afford to buy or rent. And it's a binary choice. So there's always pressure, demand from the renters to make a binary choice. And then there's the people that have to sell, right? Loss of job, all that fun stuff. So the reality is there's always a need for people to buy and sell homes because it stores human beings in it. It's different than, say, a data center. How real are we learning that office space was not essential? Right? I just talked to a buddy of mine in private equity in LA who sold a building 2 years ago for $84 million in Chicago. The buyers put $40 million to make it Class A. They just defaulted on their debt, and he said, take a guess what you think that's going to sell for as an REO. Scream it out loud. I said 20 to be a smart ass. He said 10 million.
Crazy, right?
So again, I argue that residential real estate always has a floor, because as someone who lived through 2008, and I sold homes that peaked at 350 that I sold as REOs for 44,000 a couple years later. But the rental demand, the storage of what that utility is for, is always there. And so, to answer your question is, give yourself some grace. And when you can do that, you can remember that everybody else is walking with the same monkey on their back right now. And what I tell agents is, thriving today is surviving. The market share you're winning right now, even though it feels like you're getting your ass kicked, is actually setting you up for success 12 to 18 months from now. And so the folks that aren't surviving are just getting out of the space. But right now, you don't have to compete with, someone's second cousin who just got their license either. So that's some thoughts.
I think that's really, really good insight because, I remember back in 2007 and 2008, where just, being in the real estate space, having an office, it was heavy. It was heavy, and the thought was like, what are we doing wrong, and how can we make something different happen? But in reality, we were going through a cycle. The market had compressed. We didn't have the units there. It was chaos. So what I heard you say is that in this space, we now have, again, less units, which means there are less opportunities, which means there are agents that are going to be having to leave the market space, which means there's more opportunity to gain market share from the people that keep moving forward.
From 2022 to 2023, we went down in units but expanded our market share as a company. So in 2022, we did 3.8% of every transaction in the U.S. The following year, we did 4.2 with less transactions. So, and this is where I encourage you guys to learn your numbers. So let's just take a random market. Let's say you did 100 deals one year, and then the next year you did 80 deals, and it feels like you lost, but the market's down 30%. You're actually outperforming the market by double digits. And that's where you can stop and celebrate. Because right now, more than ever, it's probably important to celebrate those small wins because it is difficult. And first, admitting it and articulating is important, right? Because I think that's where the shiny object syndrome that we're seeing happens, right? Inman did a poll that said 54% of all agents are considering moving companies right now. Because what's happening is we're having a conversation going, something's wrong. This isn't working. Maybe it's me. Right? Maybe the grass is greener somewhere else. And the truth is the grass grows where you water it.
Woo, let's get a clap for that, right?
I didn't mean to drop the bass, but that was kind of well timed.
All right, so I know a question on a lot of people's mind. Some people have dove deeper. Some people are just like, well, we'll wait and see. The NAR changes.
Yeah, I found out I was trending this week because of them.
You're trending. You're trending. You actually, fun story, fun fact, when all of this news hit and there was a need to kind of address, you did an amazing session. It was it YouTube or, right? And it was the most watched with over 60.
We had 53,000 concurrent viewers at the peak. And then we've had like a couple 100,000 replays. And Jack Miller of T360 called me. He's like, I think you've garnered the single largest audience in organized real estate ever. And by the way, I recognize that I'm not that smart or that special. It's just we're all starving for information because they're moving our cheese. And that weekend, so we found out on a Friday. Funny enough, I was actually fishing with 3XP agents. And I was like, oh shit, there goes my weekend, right? But I was on the phone all weekend with Glenn and our legal team, and we made the business decision to say, you know what, I'm going to take the risk of paying a bigger check because I need to talk to you guys directly. And so we went live on Monday and tried to unpack as much of it as possible. And the cool thing is I've heard that independents and franchises kind of use it as the model.
Well, it's that saying that this Brent says this, the speed of the leader determines the speed of the pack. Right? And so one of the things I love is that I see you move. I see in the time that you were the president of affiliated services, like everything was just like, boom, I just did this. I just did this. I just did that. You are so, I want to say quietly aggressive, but you're not quiet.
You got the aggressive part, right? I don't know about the quiet part.
Yeah. That, it gives me at least a lot of peace of mind because I know that I'm following someone who's just, 3 steps ahead. And so I think that the reason that we got all of those views is because we were first to market and we were not afraid, right? We were like, let's speak up. This is what we're going to do. Bringing clarity, bringing direction. And we have continued on that path. We just came out with some resources, right?
So one thing I'll say is let's not underestimate the value of our platform. Mm-hmm. Right? I describe our company as a platform to allow real estate entrepreneurs to build whatever size dream they want. Right? That means I partner with agents that do 8 transactions a year who are solo practitioners, which, by the way, is close to like 70% of all of our agents, and I understand that. And I'm just as proud to be partners with, the number 1 team in the world doing 1,100 transactions a year. But also, if you choose to build RevShare, which I think a lot of these people in the room do, we made it asset light and an aligned partnership compared to like the franchises before us. But again, I know the reason that we got so many eyeballs is not because of me. It's because we are the single largest platform on the planet. And so we have the most practitioners who sell the most homes. And so, again, I just have the privilege of being able to share with you guys.
We have the most practitioners that sell the most homes.
And that's a fact. So, yes.
Yes. Did you hear that?
So last year, according to Real Trends, we were the number 1 brokerage by transaction count. Not agent count, we were, but to me, the one I brag about is we sold more homes and serviced more families than any other real estate company in the United States.
Wow. Yes.
And we beat number 2 by 40%.
Repeat that.
We beat number 2 by 40%.
Right.
So it's like not even a competition.
And I think that one of the things that I'm sure you get to see, because we've got the most productive agents of any.
Our top 250 teams together would have been the 6th largest independent brokerage in the United States.
Yes.
69,000 plus homes.
So we get to kind of see things and feel things and adapt and adjust. And one of our key core values is just agility, right? So I'm sure a lot of the agents here are like, okay, if you're selling 3 or 4 homes a year, you're not going to see it, you're not going to feel it as quickly as someone who's selling 200 or 300 every quarter, right?
I had an agent call me today to ask about the listing agreement because he's signing 10 of them this week. So we get a real good feedback loop of what's working and what's not working. And I say it all the time, I'm not assuming I'm going to get it right the first time. but I will listen and adapt as quickly as possible.
So tell me what some of the top teams in the country are doing right now to prepare for the changes.
Yeah, that's a great question. So this is a different conversation I had with a very prominent coach, and he said, I feel like agents are breaking down into 3 groups. A third are the ones who are obsessing about it. Like in their team meetings, in their group meetings, they're playing hot seat and just role-playing. A third are going, it's fine, it's going to be fine. We'll kind of get through it like fingers crossed. And a third go, what are you guys talking about? Okay. And that's the one I get terrified about. So, what I've said this a lot, I think this is going to be a bigger shift than people are giving it credit for. Like if you guys have seen since March, this is all I'm talking about. I'm talking to CNN next week and MSNBC and the Associated Press. I'm on the front page of Motley Fool right now. Woo! Like this is a meaningful change to how we've been doing business for 116 years, right? I 100% think that the agent stays at the center of the transaction because buyers and sellers need expert guidance. But you guys really need to pay attention to the semantics and the process going forward. So we rolled out a buyer toolkit within 14 days of the announcement. We're already on V2. We've made the business decision, and what I think is right for the industry, to open source our forms. So I'm encouraging other leaders to borrow, change. If you find something that works, please share back. And we just rolled out our listing agreement, our listing addenda to transition active properties. Because, oh, by the way, any active listing you have on August 16th, you have to omit the buyer comp. So, like, there's active stuff. Like, please, please, please read all the emails that you get from us right now, and you go to your state meetings because this transition is meaningful. And so, again, I said it on BAM. I don't know if you guys watched that. I went live yesterday because... by the way, I was in Catalina on vacation with my kids when I woke up I was like, what the hell did they say with my name in it? And I called Byron and I said, go live with me right now. If you use my name, give me an opportunity to say what I actually said. And so that was the result of that conversation yesterday. But it's important that you guys really understand the mechanics of what's about to happen so you guys are prepared to guide your consumers. Because that's at the end of the day that what you guys do. You serve families in the largest, most expensive, most complex, friction-full transaction of their life, and they need an expert to hold their hand.
So, because I know that although the majority of agents are really good at opening up their emails, right, and reading all the information, I would love to take this opportunity to just kind of get from you, like, what should we be looking for inside of our world? Where do we find?
Yes. Okay, so August 17th, the world changes. In order for you to be paid as a buyer's agent, you must have an executed buyer representation agreement prior to executing the offer. Everybody follow along? We wrote a 1.5-page one. You can still use whatever's available in your state or MLS. We're trying to give you as many resources as possible. The most important thing that you need to understand is that the most you're allowed to collect on that transaction is what's on that agreement.
So wait a minute. So let's say that I talk to my buyer and, we're good, we sign a contract, and he says, well, how much are you going to charge me? And then I see the agreement. I'm like, you know what? You're my cousin, so I'm going to only charge you 1%. And then, X. Oh, X amount. Sorry. See, I don't know.
We don't talk about percentages.
Okay, so much. And then...
the seller's offering more than that.
Yes.
You're only allowed to collect what's in your agreement.
But what if he pays me more?
You can't collect it.
No way? No how? All
it's
right.
Super clear. Thank you. Who said that? Raise your hand.
Thank
There you go.
Yes.
She's reading.
Yeah. So then what I would need to do as a buyer and prepared to go out and negotiate would be?
So let's be very clear what the agreement says. What they do not want is variability. That was my very first question over that weekend when I was on the phone with attorneys preparing myself to speak on Monday. I'm like, can we say a floor of this and variable? No. Okay. The answer is no. Okay. Let's flip it, because I've actually narrowed it down to a sentence. Treat your buyers like you treat your sellers. Period. End of discussion. Let's pretend you were going on a listing appointment, and just for example, you would say, hey, Mr. Seller, when we get an offer, I'll figure out how much I'm going to charge you. And we won't have an expiration date. We'll just kind of see how this works. That's what we've been doing with buyers. Right? You basically found out at the time of contract what was being offered, correct? Right? And you worked with them until you kind of got tired of it, or they bought a house. Right? So now, just like a listing, where you, very important things. Everyone who's been on a listing appointment post 2012, are you competing against other agents? Assume it's competitive. Do you show up with a professional listing presentation? Does it articulate what you will do and will not do, and for how much? That's what we need to do on the buy side, right? It's like saying, look, when you show up to a listing and you are pitching against other people who may have a different cost structure and different model, you're saying, I will do X, Y, and Z for this fee, right? I'll put a sign in the ground. I'll take professional photos. I'll do drone. I'll do open house. It's all delineated in your agreement for a set amount of time, right? And you will then spend money marketing, right? You'll send out postcards. You'll do whatever it is your value proposition in exchange for the fee you're willing to accept. And for decades that I've been in this business, there are many business models. There's flat fee, there's menu of services, there's full white glove service, and we all compete. That's the intent of the agreement that is going into effect, that the buyer has the ability to negotiate and interview different people offering different business models. So that's the buy side. Okay. Now on the listing side, and this is where I trended accidentally from Catalina yesterday, our listing agreements have changed. Because as of August 17th, the unilateral offer of compensation that we all grew up with is deleted. Right? In order for you to participate in the MLS, there was this agreement where you offered compensation, and it was guaranteed a unilateral, correct? Right? If the seller decided that Rosie didn't pull her weight and didn't want to pay her, you would take the other side to arbitration, and you were paid your money. That field is now deleted. So our listing agreements simply deleted it. That does not mean we're not going to work with another company. We're just saying if the seller directs compensation, or if the buy side requests a seller credit to pay concessions, we are just getting out of the middleman business of buyer compensation. Does that, I'll say it as many times as I have to. I just want to make sure everybody understands that. You will walk in and present your value proposition for the listing side representation. I would highly suggest that you perform your fiduciary duty, and while you're showing comps, you say, hey, look, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, that house for $500,000 had a $15,000 seller concession paid towards buyer commissions, which, by the way, is the same net execution of an all-cash offer at $485 with no concessions. Right? You have to educate the consumers as to what it is. And by the way, haven't we done this for years when there's a comp from a FSBO? We've all had that conversation with an appraiser. This does not mean we're not going to work with buy sides. That's where I had to clarify for several folks yesterday, including Inman. But the reality is, you can't do it on the MLS. Period, full stop, in every single MLS. So we just want to make sure that you are prepared with paperwork that's reflective of that. Does that mean I won't have a V2 in a month? Probably. There's a good chance in 6 months when the states and MLSs do their job that I'll pull them all back. I don't want to be in the forms business, but this is what we have to do because nobody else is doing it.
Thank you. Yes. Can I have an agreement that it's going to be so much, and can I reduce it?
What the attorneys have said, you can come down, but you may not go up.
Okay. There's a couple of questions. I mean, I love that we're talking about something, so if you'd like to stand up, go ahead. Open houses and forms.
This is the fun part. We operate in 50 states, and the states are starting to do whatever the hell they want. So I'm navigating that. But most states, and again, this is state specific to where you operate, ask your broker team, are looking at open house as seller representation activity. And that's why we have disclosures of which party you represent. And if you read the listing agreement, how many of you have looked at the listing agreement we sent you? Please, all your hands go up, please. Right under the listing side, there is a blank for unrepresented duties. Because when you now meet with a seller, it is your responsibility to educate them that there's going to be a portion of the population that say, I'm not represented by anybody, and I don't want to be. Because that is my right. That's what CNN told me. Right? So just as you prepare this kick-ass buyer presentation, which I will quiz you on if I find you in a hallway at EXPCon.
And he will. He will chase you down.
I really will. I am that guy. You need to bring that buyer presentation to your listing presentation and explain, if there's an unrepresented party, who's going to do these 105 things according to NAR? And how much are you going to pay that said person if you want it to be me? Right? We are delineating roles and responsibilities as clearly as possible.
I'm super impressed that you're going to be on, you said CNN, and tell me all the places.
They called and said they wanted to talk, so we'll see what happens. Maybe they don't like what I say and I don't go.
But very impressive. I mean, just the fact that, you're our CEO, and I feel like a friend.
The reality is I don't think anybody else is returning calls because they can't articulate anything I just said to you guys.
So he's my favorite. Okay, another question for you. What would you say you said something that's like, wow, really? That we're in this recession, that like we're in this horrible...
Recession of transactions.
Recession of transactions.
I don't like being misquoted.
Okay.
I did not say we're in a recession.
Recession of transactions. 2024 will be one of the...
Worst years, like in 30 years.
Worst years in 30 years. So what does the future look like for us in, 25, 26, 27? Like if you had a crystal ball, which I know you don't, but what do you think the environment's going to look like?
Markets go up, markets come down. The when is not up to me, right? So I said this to a reporter the other day. I think the number of transactions are a math problem between three numbers. Demand, which is pent up, and we have less inventory than demand. Secondly, available inventory, which is a matter of how many homes are being built and then how many market properties are coming to market because people are legitimately rate locked. And the third one is affordability. So like if rates come down magically to something with a 5 in it, it's a game changer. If they don't, there's still a lot of demand for people who want homes. And unlike the previous time the market collapsed, we have solid fundamentals, right? 30% of all transactions are in cash, all underwritten.
30% of all transactions are cash?
Yes, last year.
Wow.
Yes. And then the ones for finance were financed with fully underwriting, ability to repay, Dodd-Frank, CFPB, all that fun stuff. So it wasn't loans. Yeah. You guys remember those, right? Fog a mirror and you qualified.
Yeah, that's like, yeah. Awesome. Now we had a question over here. Go ahead and stand up. I'll repeat the question.
So I'm loud. So in LA we have a lot of very high-end leases. So does this apply?
100%.
So I need a buyer or a lessee agreement with them as well.
And the good news is you can now say I want 1 month, not half a month or a quarter of a month.
So this applies to leases. That was a question. We have one question in the back.
So, don't quote me on this, but I think it was a cease and desist, so it's not a lawsuit yet. But California Association of Realtors pulled back, and that's actually one of the catalysts that made us write our own forms. Like, we fundamentally disagree with how a lot of the states and associations are rolling this out, and said, all right, we'll do it ourselves. Yep. The question was, can I qualify with the cease and desist? The California Association of Realtors was either rolled out or said they were going to roll out broker-to-broker commission sharing, and the DOJ said, don't you dare. Correct. They said, don't do it. Just put that back where you put it.
We'll do one more question, and then we're going to go ahead and close out. Go ahead.
Is there any recourse if I've got an agreement with you as my seller that I've got, as my buyer, that I've got a 3% commission, but I can drop it down to 2.5 if the seller's not offering that? In other words, I want to give as much as possible being offered, but I don't want to. I want to make it so that.
So again, as it was explained to me by attorneys, and I said this yesterday.
Do you want to repeat the question real quick?
Yeah, the question was, can I write the agreement to say 3% and I drop it to 2.5? Remember I said no variability. That was an important part of what the NAR settlement said. So if you start here and then you choose to credit or anything else, what we've heard is that that's going to be acceptable. The other thing that's super important to just say out loud is nobody knows what's about to happen. This hasn't happened yet. And I've gotten into debates on podcasts and on stages, and I'm doing this basically same chat with Brad Inman next week in Vegas on the main stage. The reality is we will see what happens. We will see the enforceability. And just so you know the kind of headaches I have, some states have told us that the penalty is going to be $5,000 per instance to the agent and $7,500 to the broker.
Whoa!
Some have told us they will make me give the commission back to the seller. If I don't have your buyer-broker agreement signed prior to the purchase contract, I am to not pay you and send the money back to the seller. So they're not playing with this, right? This is like I much rather spend my time doing other things for you guys than writing forms. But I need you guys as educated as possible so you can educate the consumers as well as the other agents you cooperate with. Because I want to be clear, like we're a cooperating industry. Like it's super unique and it's amazing. I think we have the most liquid, transparent, and beautiful real estate market on the planet in the United States and Canada.
You said the fine for brokers in some...
Again, one of them has whispered to us that it's going to be $5,000 to the agent, $12,500 potential fine.
How does this... Yep. How does
no,
that...
Your E&O will not cover that. No.
E&O will not cover it. Okay. How do you cover it?
And my guess is that some will just start suspending the brokerage.
That's kind of where I was going because... So I was a broker for a large office for about 10 years, one of those old offices. And one of the concerns is in California, just getting sued, right?
So I don't know where you're going with it, but I'm going to interrupt with a story. We have our integrations team right now in an undisclosed state onboarding who will probably be the number one team next year. They did 1,100 transactions last year. They were independent team rich, right? So an independent that was running a team model. And I was on the phone with him 3 weeks ago. He's like, I will be somewhere else before August 1st. And if you ever get someone on the phone like that, call me. I will close them for you. And that was the number one reason. He did not want to have the liability. He said, I will be onboarded. I will transfer all the escrows. It's your problem. I said, deal. You go sell homes, attract people, train them, and I'll deal with the BS.
And having had, thank you for that. Having had, just little tiny experiences with that, I just want to share that if you know brokers that are out there, or small independents, or, even if they have large offices like you're sharing, you have no idea.
It's not large. I think 75 people on his team. So think about the per person productivity of that team.
Wow.
Yeah.
75 people, 1,100 transactions. But where I was going with this is that you don't realize how heavy that is for individuals. I mean, brokers, they do way more than they need to.
Sorry, I interrupted you because I know we have a couple minutes
5
left.
minutes, yeah.
Right now, you have the biggest opportunity to grow since COVID. This is my humble prediction. We're going to see an accordion process, right? It's going to get really messy and very confusing. And if this week was any insight to what I have coming, I'm not excited about it. But there's going to be a lot of misinformation. You guys need to be super well versed in it so you can educate the consumer and your counterparties. It's going to get bad for some people, but 3 months from now, 6 months from now, 12 months from now, 18 months from now, I'm not sure when, the net survivors are going to need a home, and it's us. So,
Woo!
Yes.
Yes.
So I am telling you to be more bold and more confident than you've been before. If there is an independent owner, a big person you never thought you could get, send them our forms. I open sourced them. Help them. Answer questions. And you can literally say, Leo will get on the phone with you. So I have your back. Let's go bring everybody over and let's go kick ass.
Woo! There we go.